Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of Her Version. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's story. Today, I am speaking with an amazing woman named Diana. Diana dealt with a lot of self-doubt growing up. She never felt good enough. These feelings led her into a toxic relationship that soon engulfed her into a world of drinking and drugs. Encountering a whirlwind of drama, darkness, and addiction, she eventually ended up in rehab. It is here where she met her now husband and her slow progress of personal growth began. She now has 2 children and is here to tell her journey in order to give hope and inspiration to those that are enduring their own challenges. I am so happy to have Diana joining us today. Welcome, lady.
Hello, hello, hello. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
No problem. Well, I so appreciate you taking some time out of your day to hang out with me and chit chat a little bit about your story and the journey that you've been on. Because that's how we bring other people to the light.
Well, your version or your depiction of my story seems so much more enticing than what it feels like looking back on it now. Somebody told me a long time ago in recovery that going through addiction is like breaking your arm, like when you're a kid, because you remember that it hurt. You just forget how bad it hurt as the years go by, and you know that it happened. You just forget what it felt like. So whenever I hear somebody tell their version of what they've heard me say, it always just kind of like hits me in a different way.
I bet. I can only imagine.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. But I would love to kind of start out by giving you the floor for a little bit, just to kind of allow you just to kind of take us through like the bullet points of what your story is and the journey that you've been on. And then we'll kind of dig in and dive in a little bit deeper, with a few questions that we're going to be going over. But is that cool? Can we just, okay, cool. Yeah, let's just start with that.
So I got sober on October 21st, 2013. I want to start off by saying that I do not come from an alcoholic family. I have no addiction in my immediate family. In fact, I have no addiction that I have ever been exposed to growing up. There is nothing in textbook that says that I should have been an alcoholic or a drug addict. Nobody ever taught me or showed me that that's what life was supposed to be like. So that being said, and any trauma that was inflicted in my lifetime is self-inflicted. It was things that happened as a result of the behavior that I participated in. It was not because anybody did that to me. I have a very good family support system. I've always had a very good family support system. I have very wonderful parents. They've been married well over 50 years. And I just, very simply put, never felt like I belonged ever. I'm a first generation Italian American. My parents moved here in 1965. I come from an extension of love, love beyond love, aunts, uncles, cousins, you name it. There's no shortage of love in my family. But I just never could understand where I quite fit in that love. And I can remember feeling that way from a very, very young age. And although it wasn't until I was 13 till I picked up my first drink, and even then was not an alcoholic day drinker for a very long time, I can tell you that the isms of alcoholism started at a very young age. I lied. I never felt good enough. I never felt a part of. All of those things can happen from as early as I can remember at like 6 years old. I would lie to you about what I had for breakfast, little things. And I couldn't figure out why I couldn't tell the truth. I had my first drink at 13. And it was like a bad Lifetime movie. It was girls at a sleepover that were pouring drinks into a cup and mixing everything up. And I got really, really drunk, but it was the first time that I didn't have a feeling of caring. You know what I mean? I didn't care if I embarrassed myself. I didn't care if I fit in that night. I didn't care what I was saying. What I really cared about was the fact that I didn't care. And that was the feeling that I chased. It wasn't the drunk. It wasn't the blackout. It wasn't all the things that happened that night. It was the feeling of not caring is what I chased, and all throughout high school, I was a binge drinker. I went to a school where it was very much party hard, work hard, play hard. So if you did all the things that you were supposed to do, nobody really asked a whole lot of questions. And I came from a cultural household that was actually pretty strict. Like I had a lot of rules that I had to abide by, and I had a time that I had to be home and things like that, but drinking was something that it was allowed in my house, and it wasn't something that was hidden in my house. And I never really abused it in front of my family. It was just, but when I was with my friends, if I had to be home at 10 o'clock, I was blacked out by 9:45, all throughout my adolescent years, I was also that kid who kind of skated in the middle. I learned very quickly that if you were at the top of the class or at the bottom of the class, you got noticed. But if you kind of sat in the middle and skated through, nobody really bothered with you much. So I tried to kind of sit in the middle, and I was a chameleon. If you were listening to punk rock, I was listening to punk rock. If you were listening to rock music, I was listening to rock music. I tell this joke now that in 2011, I was a diehard Fish fan because some guy that I liked listened to Fish. And I hate Fish. I hate the band Fish. I loathe every song that they sing. But because this guy that I was dating listened to Fish, I was a diehard Fish fan because I was going to be everything that you were, because I didn't want you to know that I had no idea who I was.
Wow.
And that's really how I lived my life. I went to college. I went to West Virginia University. Immediately, my first semester at West Virginia University got a 0.00. And what I learned at West Virginia University was that I could kind of tell people a little bit of the truth and take a few consequences and take a few steps back and it wasn't that bad. Do you know what I mean? If I just started manipulating and negotiating a little bit and told people what they wanted to hear, I could still get what I wanted,
Got it. Yeah.
And, West Virginia University, they believed whatever story I gave them. They let me start the semester over on academic probation. But West Virginia University was not that much fun when you had to do the actual work to stay there. And that's where I started making these geographical changes because it was my friends that were the problem. It was the location that was the problem. It wasn't me. I needed to go back home and maybe go to school at Rutgers, but not really realizing that the problem was always going to follow me because I didn't realize that I was the problem,
Yeah.
And I lived that way for a really long, long time. But I would have these moments where I could kind of keep whatever was going on inside. I went home. I had a really great job. I was working full time. I would still drink. And throughout my lifetime, I would dabble in different drugs and things like that, but nothing really stuck with me. It wasn't like anything. I never found anything that I really fell in love with because like the goal was to like shut everything off and to feel better. So like I would try anything you put in front of me because I just wanted to feel better about myself. And I never found that one thing that made me feel completely better about myself. So I never stuck to anything, you know? When I came back home from college to another school in New Jersey, I had met a guy and we were dating and everything was like kind of okay, and whatever was inside was kind of like locked away. And I put it this way, like it was in this like little dungeon where I like locked the door and I could keep it at bay and it would have its moments, but they weren't that bad because everybody had their moments, but then we broke up, and I was heartbroken when we broke up. We had a really bad breakup, and that door busted open. That dungeon door busted open, and that disease that I now know that I have came out with a vengeance. Mm-hmm. And all the isms that I had, that like not feeling good enough, not feeling a part of, all those feelings, they came back up to the top, like right up to my throat, and I could feel them. And I was in so much pain that I wanted everybody around me to feel the same pain that I have. So I went on this tear of behavior that I wanted you to feel as bad as I did. And I didn't care if I hurt you. I didn't care what I was doing. I didn't care how much I drank. I didn't care what I took. Like it didn't matter because you didn't understand how badly I felt. What I know now is that it wasn't the breakup. It wasn't, me not having this person who wasn't really that good for me in the first place. It was the fact that like all those things that I was able to push down for so long, they now had a reason to come up to the surface, and I had no reason to shut them off at this point. There was nothing keeping them down. Again, through a lot of geographical changes, job changes, it wasn't me. It was the fact that I was going through this breakup, and then it was the job that I was in. I just needed a change of scenery, and, it was the location because now home was the problem. I needed to move to Philadelphia. Like there was all these things that I started making these really irrational decisions without a lot of thought put into them. And really, I wasn't able to put any thought into anything because nothing I was doing was making any sense. I moved to Philadelphia. And the thing about me is that it doesn't take long for me to find people that are doing things just like me, because when I'm around people that are doing things just like me, then I'm not that bad. And my behavior is justified,
Okay. Yeah.
So I moved to Philadelphia, and within 24 hours, I meet a guy, I meet a bartender, I have a bar that I'm going to, and it all just transpires really quickly, and alcohol is not serving its purpose anymore. And, I need to back up a little bit because my timeline is a little bit off. But before I moved to Philadelphia, I was actually working in a restaurant, and I had a headache one night. And I had walked into this restaurant and I said, "Does anybody have any Tylenol?" And they said, "No, but I have this." And it was a little blue pill, which was at the time, it was a Percocet. And I just took it. Like I didn't ask questions because that's what I do. If you give me medication, I don't ask questions. Like I'm just going to take it because I want to feel better. Right. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea that Percocet was going to change my life because up until that point, nothing had ever made me feel better, But when I took that Percocet, it shut the noise off. It shut everything off. And I was all of a sudden energetic and excited. And I felt good and I felt happy. And all those emotions of not feeling good enough, not feeling a part of, like that first night when I drank, of not caring, I felt that again, So when I moved to Philadelphia, the companion of the Percocet comes with me, And now I'm in the city of brotherly love where, drug use is rampant and you can find them all over the place. And I meet a bartender, I meet a guy who tells me right away that he's a drug addict and he likes to do Percocets, and I'm in love.
He actually said that like
yeah.
day one.
Yeah. And you would think that that's a big red flag, right? But when you are a walking red flag,
Wow.
it's not, we don't hear these things, because in my head, I'm like, great, like this is everything I need, and within 3 years, all the things that happen, right? Like we become liars, we become cheaters, we become thieves, we steal from our families, we lie to our best friends, we're robbing, cheating, stealing, thieving. That was me, and all of a sudden, all this love that I was surrounded by, they started asking questions, what's going on? Why don't you ever want to come home? Why are you so skinny? Why does your skin look like that? And inside I was dying, because that feeling of not caring, it only happened twice in my life. One time when I was 13, and that first night that I took Percocets, and I've never had it again. Because after that, I used to not be sick and then was never able to get high anymore. And eventually everything stopped working. Everything stopped working. I'm a member of a program of recovery, and we talk a lot about remembering our last drunk. And I remember my last drunk. My last drunk was on October 17th, 2013. And I drank until 3:00 in the morning with virtually no lights on in an empty house. And I couldn't get drunk. And I remember it. And I remember it like it was yesterday, and I'll never forget not being able to stop thinking, not being able to turn the noise off, and not being able to get drunk. So my family, they called me home, and I was so used to negotiating. I was so used to being able to manipulate and kind of give them a little bit of what they wanted to hear, and, them leaving me alone. But that night was different, and they weren't going to leave me alone until I told them what was going on, and I was so broken and I couldn't do it anymore that after a couple hours, I finally said, I need help. And that's the pretty version of how
Did they have an idea then? Like they could.
So my family, again, they were never exposed to addiction.
Yeah.
They were never, ever exposed to addiction. So they didn't know. They thought I was bipolar. They thought I was gambling. They thought I had all these things wrong with me, but they had no idea that I was an addict until I told them.
Yeah.
So I spent a few days in my mom's kitchen trying to figure out where to go, making the phone calls. I finally ended up in a detox in North Jersey.
During those couple of days, how are you getting your fix?
I'm not. So I had a Suboxone strip that was in my wallet that was like an emergency use that I cut into pieces and that I would take, just to kind of get me through the day.
Wow.
But I wasn't. I kicked in my mom's kitchen for a few days with a lot of yelling happening from an Italian mother. So,
wow.
And I finally got into some place. They finally found a place for me to go after a lot of phone calls. And, when I went to the detox, I thought I was going to go to detox, and I thought I was coming home because I didn't know what it was. Like, I didn't know what treatment was. I didn't know what any of this was. I mean, in 2013, we had options. Like, treatment wasn't a new thing, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't in your face like it is today. We didn't talk about it, And when I went to this detox, they started talking to me about Alcoholics Anonymous, and they started talking to me about Narcotics Anonymous and going to outpatient. And I was like, yeah, I can do all those things. I was pretty convinced that drugs had ruined my life, but I didn't know if I was ever not going to drink again. I just didn't know, And my brother picked me up from that detox, and he said, he puts me in the car, and I'm not even paying attention to what's around me. And then all of a sudden I realized that we're going the wrong way on the turnpike. And I said, where are you taking me? And he said, we're taking you to a rehab. Your bag is right next to you. You can't come home because you're not ready. And quite frankly, we don't want to be around you. And he dropped me off, and he took me about an hour and a half into central Pennsylvania, and he dropped me off, and he said, we'll see you in 30 days. And, I walked into this place, and there was like all these women, and they were like really happy. And I'm like, what? Like, I was miserable. My ankles were like this big from Suboxone, and I was miserable. I think I still like couldn't go to the bathroom. Like, I was just bloated and uncomfortable, and I was miserable. Like, you guys just took everything from me. And now you're telling me like the one piece where I knew you guys really loved me, even though I had abused my relationship with my family. Now you don't even want to be around me,
Wow.
And they dropped me off. And I walked into this treatment center, and all these people were excited and happy. And they're like, oh my God, you're an opiate addict. And I was like, oh my God, like, what is going on, And after about 24 hours, they had this non-denominational chapel service. And I had gone up to the priest that was there, and I said, can you let me make confession? Because that's super important to my mom. And he said, no, I can't, because you were mentally ill when you committed these sins, and they're not considered sins. He goes, but I'm going to absolve you. And now you have to figure out how you're the problem. And you have to figure out how God is working in your life.
Wow.
And not even an hour later, I sat through this lecture, and this guy started talking about how he heard like white noise between his ears, and his thoughts like ping-ponged back and forth, and how nothing ever made sense, and how he always thought that he just had really bad luck, right? Like, he always thought that he was just always had bad luck, and that nothing was going to work out in his favor. And I was like, that's me. Like, he spoke to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he starts talking about how he has this disease, and he's not unique, and there's other people who have it too. And I could get down with what he was saying, because he was the first person who understood how I felt. Like, he was explaining to me what was happening here, and he wasn't telling me that something was wrong with me. He was telling me that there's other people who feel like there's something wrong with them too, and that there's not actually something wrong with them, that there's a disease, and that they have to go through treatment to fix it, and it's a continual process. And I was all in at that moment, because now you had told me that there was a solution, and that I needed to fix me to do it. And that treatment stay was the only treatment stay that I have ever been to, over 8.5 years ago now, but I had no idea what that was going to look like after I left. Right. Because when I came out of treatment, like, I had to relearn how to live my life. Like, I was 31 years old, and I had to start over with everything. I had to start over with friendships. I had to start over with jobs. I had to start over with everything that I knew had to be different, And, that family, I remember picking up the phone and calling them and saying, okay, like, I know you guys are really mad at me, and I can't say sorry yet. Like, nothing that I say is going to fix any of this.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is that you guys dropped me off here to get better. But the only way I'm going to get better is if you guys figure out how to learn what's wrong with me. And I made them come, not even knowing what I was doing at that point, but I made them come and sit through like an education process over there, and learn what was wrong with me, and how to work with me, and how to recover themselves for after I got home,
Wow.
And they're like my biggest support today, We all live on the same street. Actually, we're a little codependent, to be honest with you. But it's all right. It's a good codependent. In that, I learned, I had to relive what this life was going to look like. And I had no clue what was waiting for me when I came out, And that's, kind of where we are today. I mean, a lot has happened in 8 years, So sometimes when I tell that story about what got me to that point, it feels like so long ago today,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
like the real recovery has happened, from 2013 to 2022, like the real recovery, the real pieces of things that have happened in this bulk of my life.
Yeah.
That just happened to be what got me here.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So what's your stance on congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
I love that. I love your story. Um what's your stance on relapse?
So, well, that's interesting.
I didn't know that you hadn't, and pretty much everybody has. I love that you have. I same, and my fiance actually same one time.
so I
So
have had people in my life extremely close to me relapse.
yeah,
And I believe that um it's a disease, and if we're not participating in our recovery all the time, it sits on our shoulder and it waits for us.
yeah,
And today, I'm much more aware of what signs of relapse can look like than I may have been 8 years ago, you know?
yeah,
Um, and I think that it's, it's, I'm trying to choose my words correctly, right? As a woman, a wife, a mother, a woman in recovery, it is impossible to say that you can't get mad at somebody that you love for relapsing. It's just not true. It's not true. You hate the person, you hate the disease, you hate all of it, right? Um, but after time and healing and working your own recovery, you can know that that person is a byproduct of the disease, and there's so many factors that go into what recovery looks like,
yeah,
and what happens and what matters is in the redirection of what that disease, when that relapse happens, what are we doing to correct it and prevent it from happening again, you know and I think that's really where the important part is, um my kids are getting to an age where they're starting to be like, I have a 6-year-old who's like an old soul, and I tell everybody I had him in my first year of recovery. So I firmly believe that we raised each other in that year, because I was still learning how to be a grown up. And then all of a sudden, I'm like a mom, I'm a matriarch of a family. Like, I didn't even know how to like really grocery shop for more than myself.
yeah,
Um, and in that time, like, we really, like, he will never know how much he raised me as a woman and as a mother. But we get to this point now where he's like, oh, well, I know, my dad drinks wine, not an alcoholic. He will drink a glass of wine one day and then not touch it for a week. Like, he'll get drunk and then never get drunk again for like 6 months. I can't understand it. But good for him. But my son will say to me, well, you don't drink wine and Nono drinks wine. But how come you don't drink beer? Like, other people drink beer, and why don't you drink beer? And now we're getting to the point where, I say to him, well, mommy has an allergic reaction to any kind of alcohol, just like you might have an allergic reaction to bee stings, right? So,
yeah,
like, mommy just stays away from it. So that way, she doesn't want to have to end up in a hospital someday, but they're becoming more aware of those things. And I practice in this household this idea of like, let's start the education process now. Let's talk about what that looks like. Let's talk about, if you pick up a drink, what that might look like for you. Let's talk about relapse, what that could look like for everybody else. Because if we don't, and they're not educated, and they don't know who they are and who their parents are, then they're going to go into this world blindly,
yeah, yeah,
Um, so I don't know if that answered the question, but
yeah, totally. For sure, 100%.
So
I love that you have an open mind with your kids and that you are doing your best to educate them at a young age appropriately. I think sometimes as parents we want to guard them for as long as possible, and sometimes we create some sort of like we're sort of naive to the fact that we have to answer these questions at some point, you
so
know.
I I I work in this industry, so I think my kids hear more than they should sometimes.
Oh wow, okay.
Um,
Forgot about
so I kind of have to tell them some things. But the other piece of it too is that like I don't want my kids to never pick up a drink. Do you know
Mhm.
what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
they may not be like me, and I
Mhm.
don't want them to be afraid to drink a beer or drink a glass of wine when they should, like when they're able to, you
Yeah.
know? I don't want them to be afraid to be anything other than who they can be, right? Um, what I want to do is fill their lives with healthy activities and a lot of knowledge. And I don't want them to be sheltered. And I want them to understand what could happen if they make that choice before they are supposed to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they may be able to make that choice only one time before they can no longer make that choice again. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
And I am super blessed that I have this whole like tribe of people around me that's in recovery, because I already know that like if one of my kids is like me, they're probably not going to want to talk to me about it. Like they're probably not going to want to come to me about it. They're going to want to come to the like one of 50 other people that I've surrounded them with, that they know is a safe place to go to.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but it's not going to be me. And and this has taken a lot of work because I was planning their detoxes like while they were in my womb. Like I definitely have been petrified for what this is going to look like. So this isn't like an overnight come to Jesus that I've had.
Yeah. I have the same viewpoint with my son. My son just turned, not just turned, but he's 18.
Mhm.
And the same conversations that I have with him because he knows that my fiance and I are both sober. But I have this heaviness of I don't want him thinking that just because we're sober means that he can't partake. So I'm very open with him and have to constantly remind him, like, hey, almost like assumptively, assuming that at some point he's going to do something by, telling him, like, hey, contact me anytime if you need help, anytime, driving, I'll come get you, grab an Uber, whatever you need. Like, don't hide it because it's fine, you know?
Well, that's the biggest thing that we have, that we start now is like, just tell us what's going
Yeah.
on. And I ask a lot of questions. I start the question asking thing now with my kids so that they're not uncomfortable when it happens later. I ask them, tell me about your friends, and my 6-year-old will tell me about the 3 friends that come over all the time, and I say, okay, but like tell me about the 4 friends that I don't know, and he'll say, oh, okay, and he'll tell me about a couple kids that I've never met before, and I start that now because when he turns 15, 16, and I start asking questions about some of the kids that he wants to get in a car with and he wants to go to a party with, I don't want him to find that weird that I'm starting to ask questions.
Yeah,
So
definitely. I agree. I want to ask, as far as your journey and, you know, the life that you've led up until this point, what is the biggest challenge that you've endured? And I also want to ask, what did you learn from that challenge?
so I think well there's a couple, to be honest with you. First and foremost, I think being married to another person in recovery, I think it's recognizing the biggest challenge that I had was recognizing that I can, as a wife, hold him accountable for his recovery, but it's not my job to make sure that he is practicing his recovery.
Wow.
And that took a toll on me mentally, physically, and spiritually for me to come to that realization. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also too, like, when I met my husband, and it's funny, we actually met in treatment, but we didn't start dating until afterwards, and we had a very, we met, we fell in love, we planned a marriage or a wedding, and we were married within our first year of meeting each other, and I would never have it any other way, because there's no other person in this world that I think could tolerate me, love me for everything that I am, who I am, and all of my flaws. And he is the one person on this earth who knows every single terrible and good and beautiful thing about me, But that being said, I'm also married to the one person in this world who knows every terrible, awful thing about me. Do you know what I mean? And in the beginning, when you're learning how to be a matriarch and a wife and all these things, but like, I still didn't know how to love myself, let alone teach another person how to love me. And I think that's really important, because we can be really filled with love, but we still have to teach other people how to love us. Do you know what I mean? And I didn't know how to love myself, and I didn't know how to teach myself how to love me in the beginning. So I was incapable of teaching somebody else how to love me, let alone loving somebody else, loving a child, loving all these things, So what ended up happening through my own fault was that I was like super controlling, and like I needed everything to happen a certain way, until the point came where I felt just as broken as I did that day that I went into detox. And this I was removed from all substances for like 3 or 4 years. And that is a way worse feeling than, I think, being under the influence and going through addiction, because now you have the solution, what the problem is. But if you remove all the substance from a person like me, and I'm left with me without a practicing program or any kind of practicing anything, I'm still crazy. And I need, like, all those things come back. Like, my relapse looks a lot different, and it's not in the form of drugs and alcohol today. It comes in control. It comes in selfishness. It comes in, like, all other defects that I have, My biggest thing that I have learned is that, like, my husband and I do not need to be like attached at the hip. He can have things that he enjoys, and that I can have things that I enjoy. And as long as we are walking side by side towards the same goal, like, what keeps him sober and what keeps me sober do not have to be the same thing. And he is very much thriving and has his own thing that he does, and it's great for him. And I have my thing that I do, and it's great for me. And we have this common goal of raising this beautiful family and living a beautiful life together. And that's okay. And that's what I've learned, is that we don't need to have the same thing. It doesn't need to be the same,
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people get that confused sometimes, as far as thinking that there needs to be total alignment in all areas in order for something to work. 100%.